Committee of the Whole. Notice today from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We'll go ahead and start with member introductions in the room.
Mark Littlefield.
Anna Brawley.
Karen Braga.
Karen Braga. And then on the phone we have Mr. Myers.
Sorry, it didn't work.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
And Mr. Rivera. All right, we're not hearing you, Mr. Rivera, but we can see that you're online, so we'll give you credit. We have nothing under unfinished.
Yes, I'm present. Thanks.
Okay, there we go. Nothing under unfinished business today, so let's just go ahead and jump right into the agenda. First up, we have Chugach Electric giving us an update on wildfire mitigation efforts. And when you get up here to speak, you have to press the button to make the light turn green on the microphone, and then please introduce yourselves and take it away. Also, just note for the members joining us online, I apologize, we didn't. There are 2 slides from Chugach Electric. We weren't able to get them up on the website. We'll fix that later, but sorry that you do not have those as a reference point right now.
All right, well, good morning. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Trish Baker, a government affairs manager for Chugach Electric, and I have with me Andrew Laughlin, who's Chugach's chief operating officer. We are thanking Assemblyman Johnson for inviting us here today to specifically talk on wildlife mitigation, which is a topic that's pretty important right now. Obviously, Chugach Electric's not the fire department, but we do work with the fire department. I brought Andrew, our COO, to do some discuss some details on what on a few topics. The number one thing that Chugach Electric does to prevent wildfire is vegetation management within our easements. So the easement is generally 10 feet on either side of the pole. So we have a routine, which Andrew will talk about, how we go and remove the vegetation, the fuel source, if you will, for wildfires. That's the most important thing that we can do. And then that gets mulched, which also just discourages growth in the easement. There's a few other things that we do as well, and Andrew will detail those. But also we do, like I said earlier, we certainly do work with the Anchorage Fire Department and Anchorage, other fire departments in other places where we have lines. For example, we worked really hard with fire departments, plural, in the Swan River fire, or Swan Lake. So with that, we'll do a brief overview of some of the steps that we take, and then open it up for your questions. A similar presentation was given last week, specifically for Assembly Districts 4 and 6, the community councils within those districts, because that's a place where we're currently doing our vegetation management right now. So with that, let me turn it over to Andrew Laughlin.
Thank you, Trish. Good morning. So I'll just dive right in. You guys have this slide in front of you, or the handout we brought, that kind of talks about our wildfire mitigation plan. And if you look at that, there are basically 5 components you can see on there. As Trish said, vegetation management is being kind of front and center. We also have, and I will go into some of these terms in detail in a minute here, disabling automatic tree closing, enhanced power line safety settings, public safety power shutoff, as well as incident management. So this year we are kind of making some changes to our operation, and some of these features we haven't used before. Some of them we have used quite a bit in the past, and they have been ongoing operations. And these do have impacts to our consumers and to the public. Obviously, clearing is a very visual, impactful thing that we do, as well as any changes to our operation impact reliability to our consumers. So these things will definitely impact them. And the other thing we're starting to use this year is looking at the fire weather index as one of our triggering events, and seeing a change in the fire weather index that you can see through many available through many other websites, or in the municipality looks at this as well, provides us indicators of when we start changing our operation to meet the environmental conditions. And the fire weather index, we use that because it provides information about fuel buildup around certain areas in town, Fuel moisture content takes into account environmental conditions like temperature, wind, relative humidity, and things of that nature, as well as the fire behavior. So it's a good indicator for us. Now I'll get a little bit more technical. I'll give you a few definitions before I really dive into the next slide here, or the other side of the handout. In the utility industry, we use breakers to control power, to turn lines on and off, much like the breakers in your house. They trip off when there's a fault. You manually turn them on. Ours are remotely operated. We can turn them on through our system control. They also have automation to trip off whenever there's a fault on a line, a tree hits a line, something makes contact, and the power goes where it's not supposed to go. They automatically trip off under those conditions. And we call that opening a breaker operation is opening a breaker, de-energizing a line.
Yeah, and I actually just want to interject right here, because for people who are not in the electric industry, for people in your audience today, as well as the assembly, it's not necessarily intuitive, open and closed. Closed means energized. Open means stop, not energized. So it's not necessarily intuitive. So sorry.
So there you go. You hit my next term there. Closed breaker means the line's de-energized or energized. And then there's another term we use called reclosing. You can see it up there on the screen. Reclosing is a industry standard practice whenever there's a momentary contact of a line, be it from a tree or what we call line slap. If there's a wind event and two overhead lines come together and they get close enough to arc, the breaker will automatically open and then reclose back in a little short time later. It's a reliability improvement, and it helps keep the power on for what we would consider nuisance tripping. So those are the definitions I'll throw out there. If I use anything else you guys want me to explain further, please feel free to ask me to clarify. So going into our first component of wildfire mitigation is vegetation management. As Trish said, this is key to us. It's key to reliability. It's key to keeping our line safe, keeping the public safe, and preventing wildfires. And this is a year-round activity we do. We go into our easements and rights of way. We remove all the vegetation sky to ground, meaning from the ground all the way up. And we go edge to edge from the full width of the easement or right of way, so that we have a clear and open access, as well as it prevents contact from vegetation touching the lines, causing reliability issues or tripping and reclosing or just stripping. The other thing it does is help mitigate wildfires by removing the source of ignition from the right of way. One other component we have for easement clearing or vegetation management is, I'm sorry, it's not easement clearing, it's vegetation management, danger tree removal. So we have our rights of way and our easements that we maintain. We have areas next to our rights of way and easements we do not maintain. These are homeowners' properties, other commercial properties. They can have vegetation on them, which can fall in from outside of the right of way. So sometimes we identify what we call a danger tree. And that is a structurally unsound tree that we feel is a risk of falling on our overhead lines and something we feel should be removed. We remove those and drop them to the ground as a courtesy to, again, mitigate wildfires, increase reliability, and, as a service to a consumer, if they would like the tree fell for them. Yes, and that's a good point. We require, we're required to get permission to go into private property where we don't have easements or rights to be. So of course we work with homeowners to gain access and fell danger trees.
And actually, other people can notice a danger tree. There's a place on our website to report one. So if someone says, oh, hey, I have this on my property, it's on my property, it's my tree, but it looks like it could be endangering a line, do you want to come check it out? And then we'll go check that out.
And we even have a hotline too. If you don't use the internet, you can call in and identify your danger tree and we'll come out and take a look at it too. So that's a day in, day out operation that we do. Next up is disabling automatic reclosing. Like I said, breakers open and close automatically to increase reliability. However, in certain times of the year, and we've done this historically, as fire danger increases, we have disabled that automatic reclosing function. It's a pretty quick effort for us. Fire danger becomes elevated. Our system control department makes the modifications within our supervisory control and data acquisition system, and this reclosing is disabled on specific feeders. We're not going to disable it in areas of town where it doesn't make sense, say the infrastructure is underground or there's no fire hazard or issue with trees in an area. So, you see a lot of this on the hillside, outlying areas like Girdwood or Indian, disabling automatic reclosing. And for us, we look at doing that around a high fire danger, implementing that operational procedure. And then going beyond that, and this one is new to us this year, we are moving to, and these are industry standard terms, what we call enhanced power line safety settings. Like I had mentioned before, our breakers open and close. We can have that done automatically. So whenever there's a fault on the system, those fault conditions cause it to open. What we're doing with EPSS or enhanced power line safety settings is making those settings much more sensitive. So it takes a lot less fault current and a lot less, a few other parameters I won't go into, but differential current flows that will allow the breakers to sense something that isn't typical and not right and opens up. And under both of these scenarios, between disabling automatic reclosing and enhanced power line safety settings, when we have a breaker operation due to an event on the system, we will go out and patrol those lines physically prior to re-energizing them so that those consumers will remain out until we can be assured that the hazard is gone.
I need to say about the outages on that.
Okay.
So, and so, why isn't this sensitive all the time? These two steps would increase outages and their duration because we're going to go put eyes on it. So that's why it's not 100% of the time doing that. That's why there's a trigger such as, fire danger, enhanced fire danger, that would be something that we would move to this system.
So that's a good point, Trish. The EPSS would only be employed when there's a very high fire danger. We would see significant outages. What we're also doing is removing some of the selectivity of the instrumentation. So we're taking larger outages, much faster tripping times, and trying to get a bigger swath to make sure that we're ensuring there's public safety, right? So we don't have a tree on a line in somewhere it shouldn't be. So that means a lot longer outage times to patrol, a lot more line before we re-energize. And with the increased sensitivity, a lot more tripping. So shorter time periods during the year is compared to disabling automatic reclosing, but it is a feature we're going to be employing this year should the fire danger get high enough. The next line of defense is public safety power shutoff. Chugach always keeps eye on safety being our highest priority, keeping the public safe, keeping our personnel safe. So public safety power shutoff is in fact what it sounds like. In a proactive situation, we would de-energize a circuit should the fire danger become elevated enough. If we get to that extreme category and we see some other contributing factors such as extremely low humidity, extremely high wind, extremely high temperatures, we would evaluate the need for a public safety power shutoff to ensure that there are no events that would cause a wildfire. Then the last line item there is incident management. We liaise frequently with the EOCs, whether it's state or the mini EOC, when on emergency operations. We go through training exercises. As Trish mentioned, the 2019 Swan Lake fire, we worked with the authorities managing that incident. We take direction from the incident commanders and energize and de-energize lines at their request. So we're pretty adept at doing that sort of response work with them. The other thing I would highlight is we are also working with the fire department and the MOA on the community wildfire protection plan that's going on right now. In fact, we're participating in 8 different work groups with them to better enhance a community program. So we are a component of that, whether it's supporting, water supplies, helping provide water to the firefighters, making sure we understand where the accesses and egresses are during evacuation events, providing them some GIS mapping tools, and just making sure our plans generally align, and also community engagement, because we are going to be a key component to any sort of response there. I guess with that, the last thing I have to add is you can see the categories at the bottom and how our response levels change as we move through different levels of fire danger. So that's really all I have to add, unless you guys have any questions.
We do. I will note for the record that we're joined by Member Constant at 11:07, and then Member Rivera went from on phone to in person around 11:13. I'll say I actually found that fairly reassuring, so thank you. First in the queue, I have Member Brawley.
Yeah, thanks for the overview. And I will also say, you guys cut some trees in our backyard a few years ago, which I was sad about, but also now we have more sun. So, so thank you for that. It was along the Chugach line. My two questions are really more in the upstream, because I understand a lot of this is kind of responding or, you know, if something's already happened. Or I guess one question is on that, the other is unrelated somewhat. Where does undergrounding lines fit in this? And I know that has a cost, but I also know, you know, our city, like other cities, is becoming more urban over time. And so that seems like another way to mitigate, you know, the line issues, not just for fire, but other things. So that's a question about where does undergrounding fit in? The other one is, there was a recent power outage that didn't hit me personally, but kind of hit multiple places. And I saw it was a load shed.
Yep.
And I know that's a separate topic from this, but I'm just wondering, is that the kind of thing we would see more of, or how do we prevent that situation, knowing it's separate from this, I imagine?
Okay, so one thing at a time, the underground, did you want to?
Sure. On the undergrounding, I was actually here yesterday with the administration talking about this very topic. If all Chugach members will see on their bill a 2% underground fee. And what that is part of the Title 21 ordinance for beautification. So Chugach collects that money from its members. It's a pass-through cost from our members. And then we identify, you know, those areas. I think certainly safety, reliability are all considerations for the order. This is several years worth of work, decades of work. So the new construction is already requiring undergrounded lines. So we're going back to the older neighborhoods to do the undergrounding program. Some of them require permission from the homeowner to be on their property. Lacking that, if someone does not want to give us permission, then we can't do that segment. There's so much to be done that we'll just move to another segment. But certainly undergrounded lines do provide a fire safety component. That's one of the benefits of undergrounding. Does that answer your question, or do you want more information on that?
No, I think that's helpful. And I know it's kind of something we have to chip away at, but just to say that is
Very much
that
so.
seems also like something to not have them in the air.
Yes, very much so. And sometimes what drives the priority is other work being done, say DOT, if there's, you know, a line in there or another project. So although we do have a 5-year plan that's updated annually, other things happening can rearrange the order. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk about load shed.
Yeah, one other thing I'd add
Yeah,
to what
sure.
Trish said was that, you know, safety is one of the things we look at with the undergrounding plan now. If there is a NESE code violation, we will use undergrounding funds to underground that rather than rebuild an overhead line with a just code compliant overhead line. So in the future, we will be looking at how can we look at fire mitigation with fuel loading in other areas that maybe there's some hardening of infrastructure where maybe undergrounding makes sense just to eliminate a hazard. So it's just a future component we're going to add to our undergrounding plan. And so moving on to the load shed event, that was a load
On this.
a load shed event
Just
that was
real
caused by
quickly before you pivot to that, I think Member Constant wanted to get a quick question in
Things
relative
on
to this topic.
undergrounding. I've been asking from the administration, from Mr. Spofford, a kind of a comparison of the 5-year plan at the time of the sale of the transaction of MLP to Chugach. There were commitments made that you would implement that plan. And I want to understand how much deviation from that implementation has occurred, because that plan was sensitive to the demand for covering the north of Anchorage, the more urban areas, and getting some of that work done, because we have been long told that it's just easier to do large lot configurations with less building on them. Thus, the reality is all undergrounding is happening outside of the urban areas, or not all, but generally speaking, because you get more bang for your buck. And so I'm hoping to, and again, I've been asking for months, get a copy of kind of a cross-reference between the plan at the time 5 years ago when the transaction happened and now, so that we can see if there has been any meaningful kind of work in the north.
Okay. Yeah, I can reference a few projects. I know there was an Arctic Aurora project, but we can
Yeah, I
look
mean,
into
there's
that.
the Campbell.
Yeah.
You know, that's been every year keeps getting pushed. I don't want to get into specifics
Yep.
here because that's not on the agenda, but I would sure love, between you and Mark, Chugach as a whole, I don't think it's necessarily you, Andrew, but provide a kind of an update so we can see what was proposed and what's happened in the 5 years since the transaction.
Okay,
Yep, I got it.
thank you.
Load shed.
All right, under frequency load shed. So under frequency load shed is a protective scheme in everyday operation, moment to moment. We have to maintain the balance between load and generation, and that means our system frequency, if those two are matched, our system frequency is right at 60 hertz. If we were to have too much load compared to our generation, our system frequency slows. If we have too much generation, our system frequency increases. On the event you're referring to, we had an issue with returning a unit to service, and a valve sequencing was done out of order, and the one of the units tripped offline. So we had basically a cascading issue in the plant where we lost the South Central Power Plant. There was no damage done to the machines. We went into stage 1 load shed. So we shed about 10% of our system load. The units were subsequently put back online and returned to service. And then load was, power was restored within 20 or 30 minutes to those who had lost power. Your question, I believe, was, is that similar to this? I think this would be a very PSPS or EPSS, or disabling automatic reclosing, is a little bit different. First, this is working on timescales in days, versus under frequency load shed is something working in, less than seconds. We're operating in the millisecond range to make sure we maintain frequency balance. So I would anticipate us having some heads up as we're looking at weather coming, and understanding that there may be some need to, shift from disabled automatic reclosing or go into a more sensitive EPSS kind of settings to ensure safety. And we would be able to let people know. I think we put out public communication every time we do disable automatic reclosing, so people know that, if there's a momentary contact between a tree and a line, it's going to go out of service until we can patrol it and restore it.
And I neglected to introduce Julie Haskett, our Senior Corporate Communications Manager, but that certainly public information would go hand in hand with anything we were doing proactively.
And quick question for me on that. So I know I'm familiar with the Chugach Electric website where outages are reported. If there's an outage or a proactive step to de-energize the system, is that reflected on the outage map? And can we see like what the cause or reason was?
So you would be able to see it on every outage. You can see on the outage map. If there's 1 meter or 200 meters, regardless of the cause, it shows up on the outage map. You can see it there. I will caveat that with, that is intended to be with, smaller outages. When you have a large system outage, it aggregates all of it. So it gets a little bit different to look at, but something like this, you would see on the outage map. And there would be, I'll look at Julie if she wants to make any comments about communication proactively ahead of time in those kind of events.
If it's quick, sure.
Okay. I would anticipate it.
Just real quick, we got to get to a microphone.
I'm sorry. I thought they were hanging. Thank you, Julie Haskett from Chugach Electric Corporate Communications. If we were going to do any of those steps beyond vegetation management, we send out alerts to the media, social media. If we were to do something like public safety power shutoff, that would be, we would jump up and down before it's happened. We would alert the media. We have about 60 or 70,000 emails of our members, of our 92,000 members. We're working on a mass email system. So we would let you know ahead of time that something like that was coming. Like Andrew had said, if the fire conditions are ramping up and we're making plans to do something like PSPS, we would let the public know. It's not going to say that on the map, that this is that, but hopefully you would know ahead of time that that's coming. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the map's the map. It'll just show you an outage for whatever
Gotcha.
reason.
Yeah.
I'm just looking around the room. Any other questions quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize this was still on. But I just wanted to thank Julie Haskett for, I had a resident that had been very concerned about the number of outages at her property, and she was able to dig through snowstorm, bird online, fuse out. But it was interesting to me, that particular property had 3 load shedding events, and it seems like if there's, I don't know if they have to shed the same place over and over. I mean, it seems like you would share that wealth if you have to do a load shed. I sound very unelectric. talking
No,
this way.
yeah, no, I
So,
understand.
I can answer that question.
Julie.
It's, I call it a formula. There's a formula for the load shed. It's these customers, these, and these. It's supposed to change after every load shed event. We're supposed to redo the formula. We got behind earlier this year, and there was a group of folks who I think went through 3 load sheds. That was super unfortunate for them and us. And that's back up on the priority list to make sure, like the load shed from a couple Sundays ago, that list is already being reconfigured. So if we have another one, it's not the same group of people. And we don't load shed the hospitals, the airport, the military bases, and some other critical infrastructure.
Okay, thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time and appreciate the efforts you're doing to help keep us safe out there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have an update from Solid Waste Services relating to the Merrill Field and the historic landfill underneath. Ms. Toth, are you on the phone? Ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right, Mr.
So-
Freeman, be pulling up the slides here, but why don't you go ahead and get started if you're ready.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly. Today we're going to talk about the municipal landfill, the historic municipal landfill, which is Merrill Field. Excuse me. So the landfill at Merrill Field was opened back in the 1940s. It was closed back in the 80s. Then it was then an unregulated landfill. It had a passive gas system installed in the 90s, and that SWS did voluntarily. And we continue to do routine monitoring ongoing since installation because it's the right thing to do. So next slide. So our plan was to revise, replace, and update the system anyway, which is why you see it in the Q1 budget revision, because it was our plan to do so. But what became then very urgent was during the January windstorm, we went through several power surges that severely damaged the gas collection control system. So in addition to what happened to the windstorm, we do have pipes that have been crushed and filled with condensate, components that are obsolete and unavailable, as well as the system is just is beyond repair. So this picture is actually of an area that is a gas probe that was then built on top of. So there's a building that sits on top of this actual gas probe. And then before the asphalt was put down, it was dynamically compacted, which is what also impacted some of the infrastructure. Next slide. So inside the buildings themselves, the methane levels exceeded the lower explosive limits, which is what you see in that picture are monitors that SWS went out and purchased for each of the tenants where they were exceeding these areas. There was infrastructure and concerns for tenants in there, so we advised them to ventilate the area. SWS is not a respondent or type entity, but because we were monitoring it and thought that was our suggestion, we installed the monitors and we also encouraged the ventilation. Next slide. On March 11th, 2025, the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, AEDC, required a timeline for remediation. And then yesterday, they also sent us an email reiterating the urgency and cited that the state law violation as AS 60.805 compliance failure if unaddressed. So we are on notice by them that we need to act. Next slide, which is why we signed yesterday, the mayor signed the emergency procurement and justifying in item A1 and A2 health and safety emergency and time sensitive urgent need. So that approval happened yesterday. Next slide. The reason for this is procurement delays do have concern for risk and legal noncompliance. the infrastructure failure is immediate, and so we don't want to lose, we just can't lose this construction season. Next slide. So our plan is for the approval to proceed with SDS Engineers. Next slide. SDS Engineers is a worldwide group engineering firm that is a leading environmental consulting and contracting firm. They have 50 years of experience in solid waste, landfill gas management, and environmental compliance. They specialize in designing, constructing, and operating landfill gas systems that reduce emissions, ensure regulatory compliance, and enhance environmental protection. So not only are they the industry leader, full service design, build, operations capabilities, they do have a proven track record. They have been our ongoing contractor for all things monitoring and regulatory compliance with landfill gas. They also have the in-house expertise in engineering and monitoring, including a previous director of solid waste services and an engineer, so they know full well the nuances of Merrill Field. In fact, a lot of historical knowledge that may not be on paper, but they know because they've been there. So that is the reason for choosing SDS Engineers. Next slide. So if you look at this map, you can see this is kind of an overview that shows all those circles that you see are the wellheads and the gas lines that we know of that is in this infrastructure. And if you go to the next slide, you see the previous map shows where, sorry, if you go back one, that map shows what phase one would look like. And that goes right behind all of those buildings there to the far left of your screen. Those are all those buildings that are experiencing the lower explosive limit where they've been monitored. So that is our phase one priority, is to get that main line replaced. And then the next slide is the phase two, which would be to the south of the main line, and that will also help to relieve pressure on the basically on the bubble of landfill gas that's underneath the asphalt. The landfill gas needed to have a way to be collected, and dynamically compacting and putting asphalt over the top was not ideal, but it's what we have to deal with. Our main priority is going to be ensuring that Merrill Field, we're working very close with Director Malpass to ensure that there is minimal impact to Merrill Field residents and air pilots. So next slide. And once again, this is kind of a compressed timeline, subject to change, but we do have a plan as far as how the phasing is going to go, and we have assured Director Malpass we are going to be working very closely with them to make sure that we have good, close communication as this construction project gets underway. The next thing I just wanted to share with you is just to change topics, is the waste to energy. I did want to share with you a calculation of a question that was asked by another member. Based on approximately 300,000 residents, people, according to the EPA, produce about 4.9 pounds of waste a day. That's about 742.5 tons a day. That's about 271,000 tons a year of municipal solid waste. So in 2022, we buried about 193,400 tons. So I just want that to be on your radar as far as calculations go. That was a question that was asked. I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that. And then the next slide gives you a draft idea. I know there were some questions about when there was going to be assembly approval and when there was going to be assembly report out. Once we get this completed and finalized, you will get this, and this will be that roadmap that we were asked about as far as where the off-ramps are, when the check-ins will happen. So this will be clear, and we will be on schedule and poised to be able to check in with you on a regular basis and be able to give you updates as far as where we are. Next slide. And then just to shift once again on our first quarter budget revisions, we really separated those into buckets, the people, the projects, and the property. And if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to share with you that what we put in our people bucket. We prioritized our safety contract extension. If you remember, we had ACOSH violations last year, and we brought in a subject matter expert for safety that's helping us to rebuild our program. So this is really important to us to continue the work that we started with our safety consultant, as well as actually having a line item in both the utilities, both disposal and collection, for safety PPE and training. So those are now part of our regular budget. And then as part of the ACOSH inspections, we took a hard look at our household hazardous waste contract and found that there were some good opportunities for us to revise the contract that will help us and our third-party contractor that manages our household hazardous waste operations. We're changing some of our policies and procedures because of that effort. So we added in a revision to the budget to be able to meet those needs. And then there's the Merrill Field gas collection system that we were talking about today, and then also a couple of other positions that we needed to have funded. So that's really all I wanted to share with you today. There are more slides in this presentation, but those are the things that I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I have myself in the queue and then Member Bronga. And my first question, I think, should be pretty quick and easy, but just to make sure it's on the record, what's our confidence level that we're not going to see any buildings explode between now and when the work is completed at Merrill Field?
So we actually just went out again yesterday just because I wanted to know too, like, where are we today? And those monitors, they are still working. Those monitors are in those buildings, and the tenants know that they need to actively ventilate. So I would never pontificate or assure that nothing will happen. But it is of high priority and concern, and so that's the reason of this urgency now. We don't want to wait.
Nice quick follow-up to that. As we're monitoring this, is there a level where we would say it is no longer safe for anyone to occupy those buildings, and until such time as we get the remediation accomplished, they need to be vacated? Is that potentiality?
Well, I would say that those monitors are in place for that reason, that if they were to go off, then the tenants know that they need to vacate the area. It is interesting, AFB, the fire department, went in there, and when you're standing in the middle of the room and it's actively ventilated, you can't, you don't pick up the methane, but if you go straight to the source of where it's coming out of, then that is where you get the levels. So the concentration is actually coming out of areas like electrical conduits, which is part of the reason for our concern.
Okay. Thank you, Member Bronga.
Thank you. Will this project in any way help with the leachate issue, or they're just totally separate?
Which project?
Member Bronga, through the chair, I would love to say that leachate is and the liquid seep issue is not going to be a problem, but it is absolutely going to be something we are going to have to take up as just as we are this situation, only this one is directly related to immediate health and safety, which is why we're coming to you now. But leachate is right on the heels of that. And that does remind me that last year, you remember, we did a procurement for installing an additional gas probe and a leachate well off to the side there up by the Veterans Memorial, which we did drill a test well, and I'd be happy to come back and report to you what the plan is. But that gas probe plus the well were both done to gather data and make a plan so that we can move forward to fix this aging infrastructure and problems that we have. So it is separate, and we will have to take it up and address it very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Not seeing anything else. We got about 16 minutes left and one more presentation. From Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility. As soon as you guys are set up, if you want to introduce yourselves and jump right in, please.
David Persinger, General Manager, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility.
Mark Sharma, Director of Engineering, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility.
Good. While we're getting set up here, can I just ask quickly, is anybody in the room or online who's hoping to participate in audience participation? Take that as a no. Gentlemen?
All right, thank you. Through the chair, we're going to give you a quick update on several AWWU projects. There's a couple of nuances with these that we wanted to talk through. Want to give you a couple of updates on waste energy, particularly how it pertains to AWWU. There was a few questions that came up last week in first quarter budget revision. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk about the SRF loans, and then I'll talk about waste energy and then follow up with strategic.
Okay, good morning. I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly here. There is a program that we've become aware of that the state through the DEC is offering. There's actually two programs that we're trying to take advantage of. One is emerging contaminants. The other is a compliance order. And we found some opportunities to apply these funding sources to some projects. And we're going to walk you through those projects. One is the Girdwood water supply, which is a replacement of wells 1 and 2. Another is the Tenina Hills project, which is a subdivision off of Raspberry south of the airport here in Anchorage. And then we've got several outstanding potential future projects. And we're bringing this to your attention because these were not on our original CIP. And so we're going to have to do modifications through quarterly budget revisions to the CIP. And then we're going to be having to go in and do resolutions to accept SRF loan funds. And then, like Dave said, we're going to talk about other projects here, waste energy, strategic planning, et cetera. The beauty of these two programs that we've identified is that they are a loan program that is part of the SRF, that's the State Revolving Loan Fund program, and they are 100% forgivable. So they're fundamentally a match or a grant with no match. We have to front the money and we get reimbursed. That's a cash flow issue, but to get 100% forgivability is quite an accomplishment. Just as a note, these are federal funds that are run through the state of Alaska. The state actually has the money, so this is not one of the funding pools that is currently held up. But this program is also on a limited, it's statewide competitive, it's limited in funds, and it's a first come, first serve project or program. Right now, we don't actually know the total value of the program, but I believe it's large enough to incorporate all our requests and probably the balance of the state as well. So Girdwood. Girdwood is supplied by, has two different wells in it that AWWU is using, both of which have issues. One has a water quality issue, which is an emerging contaminant of manganese. The other has a GUDASAW compliance order, and that is that the there is a suspicion, or at least there's a compliance order by the DEC that tells us that our groundwater is under the influence of surface water. Surface water and groundwater have different treatment protocols. So we've been kicking that back and forth if that's something that we really want to deal with. And one thing that we've come up with is the solution is to put in a new well that removes the problems of both wells 1 and 2. Not only will it take care of our compliance orders, but it'll also, when we get to the next slide, you'll see the map. We have a fairly significant O&M expense in maintaining both these wells, and they are not in the best location for resiliency. So there you can see the 2 wells that we're talking about are they're planned north of the airport there. It's quite a bit of a road to get out there. Wintertime snow removal is not inconsequential. The 2 wells are close to each other. It's kind of interesting, the geology of Girdwood. You can have 2 wells close to each other in vastly different quality and production rates. Again, well 1 has a manganese level issue. Manganese is on the list of emerging contaminants. In a strange way, that's good for us. Well 2 has a compliance order. Now, well 2 is a high producing well, or is a lower producing well, and with the future of Girdwood just projected to go up, we're going to need a lot of production. So, next slide. What we've done is we have advanced, there's 2 wells down in the new Girdwood town site on HLB property, just off of Hightower Road. We've advanced those wells to the point that we feel that we can get a high production well or 2 there, that with the water quality that we're looking for, without the regulatory issues associated with well 2 to the north. So we would, and this is very preliminary, we're still in the middle of due diligence on this project, but we would probably put in a 500,000 gallon storage tank and potential treatment options for future consideration. You do this now while you're in the planning stages. Next. So how we would do this is we would, cobble together funds, or we would commingle funds here. We have a commitment of $5 million in the emerging contaminant program. We have a commitment of $1.5 million, and this is through the intended use plan put out by the DEC that we applied for. This money is, I don't want to say at risk, but at risk pending assembly approval. So there's a timeliness issue here. We're not behind schedule or ahead of schedule. We're just 6 months from now, this money's gone. New Girdwood town site, we have a $3 million CDS, congressionally directed spending grant through Senator Murkowski's office. This is, as we know, currently held up in the 90-day, what you call it, the 90-day hold on all grants. I do see that, just as a point of knowledge, other grants that we have applied for in previous years are starting to come through. Infrastructure grants, the EPA is opening up their applications for this. So I'm starting to see movement, and I'm optimistic that on hard infrastructure grants like this most likely will materialize, although it will be, 3 to 6 months behind schedule. Plus, there is the continuing resolution in DC that won't be resolved until at least September. So I'm not sure that will play into this as well. Regardless, we have about 9.5 million cumulative in funds that we can apply to the Girdwood well. We expect that project to be in the rough order of magnitude, $15 to $20 million range. So AWWU will have to put in some of its own capital dollars. Most likely we'll be considering that a match to the CDS, which has a 20% match. Next. Other project, Tenina Hills. I think we're kind of familiar with the PFAS issues generated out of Anchorage International. Without weighing into any liabilities of that, PFAS is an emerging contaminant. And so we have applied for money to do that project in the same way that we applied for the Girdwood project. Interestingly enough, the DEC is willing, and in fact is encouraging us to go on property and hook people's homes up. Now, that is not the AWWU standard. The AWWU standard is to get to the property line and leave the on-site connections to the homeowner. Well, not usual for us, but not terribly unusual either. We're going to be hooking people up, and we'll be segregating these funds and segregating the work because it's a little bit outside of our normal course of activities. But we will be providing at no cost to the homeowners, assuming that projects come in on cost, we'll be providing clean water to these people. And this is a pretty exciting part of this program. So with this project specifically, we have about $3.3 million committed to I call it the base work, which is the hydrants and the water main that has to be put into the street. And then of course the rebuilding of the street afterwards. We are projecting about $1 million in the on-site, on-property hookup cost. Because this is a capital project, any other costs associated with this would be a levy and an assessment on the property, but this would be a levy upon connection. And this is the kind of levy that neighborhoods like this like, because if you don't participate, you don't pay. So if you do participate, the charge of this will be, well, let's say pennies on the dollar for what the total cost of this project is. We're going to be looking at the most likely $4.5 to $5 million range to do this work. A couple other potential projects are on our radar because of the same emerging contaminants. We've been approached by some residents on Teschler Drive, which is off of East 68th. There's 16 lots there. We're looking to see if there's a smattering of these lots that have contaminated wells with the emerging contaminant. We would, if we had the indications that existed, go out and actually sample, because they need qualified lab samples to prove to the DEC that this is in fact eligible for emerging contaminants. We're hopeful that we can get about $1 million to maybe $1.5 million for this project. We've talked to the DEC about that. They're encouraging us to move forward. Right now, we're working with the residents in this area, and I would love to give each one of these folks clean water. If you look at the map, you can see that there's two other streets right adjacent to this, very similar. And I would call this low-hanging fruit. We have water mains adjacent. We have water mains in the area, and we have small lots. This is the least cost per lot that you'll probably ever get to hook up, get a new customer. So if there's anybody out there who lives on Baby Bear or Tiffany Place, you might want to consider, if you have any concerns about your water quality, contacting us. Next. Okay, so while time is of the essence, this is a pretty traditional schedule. Obviously, we're here today to present to you and take your questions. On April 21st, which is Monday, I'll be over at Girdwood Board of Supervisors, GBOS, giving this exact presentation to them and answering their questions. After that, we go into the introduction of the supplemental budget and associated AMs and ARs that will allow us to accept SRF loans. And then on the 20th is most likely the public hearing, if that's the way the Assembly runs their schedule.
All right, thank you, Mark. I'll try to get through this real quick because I know we only have a couple minutes left. So I wanted to talk a little bit about waste energy, and so why is AWWU supporting waste energy? Why would we be interested in burning trash? Well, one word, biosolids. We produce, and I use that in quotation marks, about 20 dry tons per day of dry solids. And it's high energy biosolids. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about like Alaska landmines, high energy. I'm talking, this stuff is primary sludge and it has a lot of volatile components in it, which means it's about 85% energy or energy containing material. About 15% of it is inert. So currently what we do is we incinerate that in a multi-hearth incinerator that's almost as old as I am, and it's in a lot worse shape. And it's coming to the end of its useful life. We've been, we maintain it, we take it down, we bring people in to crawl through it and fix it, but it's not a, forever process. It's also a huge energy consumer. We burn about $3 million of gas and electric, and that's just in gas and electric. It doesn't include air permitting and all the other things that go along with operating a multi-hearth incinerator. It also uses a lot of water because of the emissions control system. Actually, our wastewater plant is our largest customer on the water side. So Aspen Water Pollution Control Facility uses the most water of all of our customers in the municipality. And we currently are looking at having to replace that. And just to replace the process is somewhere around 50 to 100 million plus. And that doesn't include energy recovery or ultimate disposal. There's still a disposal that has to happen. And currently we incinerate the sludge. That reduces it down about 85% in volume, and then we landfill the residuals. But there's other things that can be done with that. There's also long trucking routes all the way from the airport out to Anchorage Regional Landfill. And then there's a huge carbon footprint, both associated with incinerating the sludge, using gas and electric, as well as all these trucks on the road and moving it back and forth. And then ultimately, this has the potential to save money for our ratepayers, for AWWU's ratepayers down the road, and actually for solid waste as well, because this joint project takes care of a lot of other issues. One of the things we currently have to do is maintain a Title V air permit at Aspen, because we're an emitter under that. If we were to get rid of our incinerator, that Title V air permit goes away, and that permit is an extensive effort. It's about, for us, it's about 1 FTE and about a $300,000 a year in contracting just for the air permit. Solid Waste also has an air permit at the Anchorage Regional Landfill, so we're both under that, under different permits, but under the same section of the Clean Air Act. So going forward on this is a solid waste led effort, but it's a collaboration between AWWU and solid waste, and we're providing funding for part of that as well, because again, this is an investment for our future as well. We have to be able to deal with biosolids, and we have to be able to deal with long-term environmental issues. And in order to get this project moving forward, there was a characterization study. There was a resolution passed yesterday, so I think you're familiar with that, but we're going to use the program management office that was awarded late last year as an oversight of this whole project, to provide program oversight, and they'll provide some technical oversight, where's characterization, site selection, looking at all the permitting parameters, financing, ownership, operation structures, public involvement, and then help us prepare basically a master RFP to go out for the actual waste to energy project. And I want to point out that the municipality, both AWWU and Solid Waste Services, retain oversight of all aspects, including procurement and contractor selection. So these contracts will go through the normal procurement process with our purchasing department. Now, switching gears a little bit, I gave you a kind of a sneak peek of our strategic plan during my transition hearing, but I wanted to bring this back. I want to do a little bit more work on this. We need to complete this. It was originally competed through a request for proposal process, but we need to do a little bit of extra work to finalize. We also need to dashboard and be able to track the performance on that plan, and then really taking a deep dive into leadership and staff development. There's a lot of areas where we could improve our operations and help everybody working together. So that'll be upcoming in the next month or so. It's a fairly large amendment. It'll probably be about 1.5 years or 2 years, so it won't all be done this year, but it's critical for us to position ourselves and to fully implement our strategic plan. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thanks. I know it's 12:01, but the Budget and Finance Chair was kind enough to say that she's okay with us going a little long here. And with that, she's the first member in the queue with a question.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about the, and thanks for the overview of the revolving loan fund and those projects. So it's not these other topics. And I'm familiar with the Tenina Hills project. I know it's been a bit of a saga, and I know some of it also came out of kind of a lot of concern about the Northlink project at the airport, and then led to some other testing and so on. I guess my question is, and I appreciate the finding ways to connect folks, especially if there's no cost to them. But I guess I wonder, given how many other needs there are in the community, and knowing that this is for emerging contaminants, are we setting up a precedent where everybody will expect essentially to pay nothing, even if there is an issue with their well? So I just kind of wanted to register that concern.
Well, that's a fair concern. Obviously, the emerging contaminant funds only apply to wells that have emerging contaminants, and that's a very defined list. strangely, some of the things that you might think should be on the list are not on the list. So not every well and not every contaminated well in Anchorage is eligible. If you are eligible, we are taking names and numbers of people that come to us with their concerns. We don't know the water quality of every well. If you have concerns, you come to us. If you have significant concerns in the community, the subdivision, the neighborhood, so that we trip into a programmatic project response, we go to the DEC, which has limited funds, but they're fairly healthy. And so as people have come to us, we move forward. So the prioritization isn't that we reach out to everyone who has a well, it's the folks with contaminated wells come to us, and we don't prioritize them. We're doing everyone. So if we can get a project put together, we do it.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, these are for emergent contaminants. So, Anchorage has quite a bit of arsenic, for example, in wells. Arsenic is a known contaminant, it's been, regulated for a long time. Those would not be eligible for this. This is emerging contaminants like PFAS, manganese, ones that are on the cusp of being regulated.
Yeah, thanks. And I understand and appreciate that too. I know there is a fair amount of arsenic, especially in places like Sand Lake. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make clear on the record that that we should be cautious about setting up that expectation, knowing again, this is a special fund, and also that there's situations where it is expensive, or it would be difficult to respond quickly. And I guess also then, so it sounds like the advice for anybody with any issue of contamination in their well to go speak with AWWU as soon as possible, and then that's kind of initiating that process.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Just one last call. Anyone here for audience participation? See anyone? It's 12:04. Let me ask, what time do you want everyone back here, Anna?
Let's start at 12:15.
12:15 for budget and finance. With that, we will be adjourned. Thank you.